Hello, younglings, and welcome to episode 99 of Padawan Library, the Star Wars Junior Novel podcast. I'm Levi Paratic, and with me, as always, Tim May.
Hello, everyone.
And we have no reading assignment this week. We have a special guest coming on the show, a special surprise guest. I'm sure the surprise is actually ruined by the title, but also you probably have no idea who this person is, and let's not even get into it until we get into the interview portion of the show.
All right, so yeah, we want to do something. Somebody reached out to us that was involved in the Adventures in Wild Space series. He was the editor of the series, reached out, said, liking the show, it's fun, and we appreciate the compliment. And so we also said, well, why don't we interview this guy? And we finally, a few false starts, but we finally worked it out. Not on his end, on our end.
We've been working on this for months, I would say.
Hopefully, we're about to do the interview, so we don't know how it turned out. Hopefully it's a good time, and you learn some new information about the series and about how editing a licensed property works. Like, there's some interesting potential topics at hand here. So, I was very excited, and we're in advance thanking him for coming on the show. But we took last week off.
We did.
Because
You were on vacation.
I was on vacation, and...
how was your vacation, by the way?
You know what? It was fine. I had a good time. I went to the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame, went into Boston for a bit, visited lots of extended family, hadn't seen in quite a long time. So it was a good time. I was happy.
Now, the Basketball Hall of Fame, is there anybody... Because I had an experience with my mother where we went to a Hall of Fame, and she was disappointed that certain things weren't in the Hall of Fame. Do you have any gripes with the Hall of Fame?
I don't really have gripes with who's in or not, because actually the Basketball Hall of Fame, to some degree, is maybe too big in terms of who they let in. But I'd rather have a too big Hall of Fame than a too small one where they're snubs. Mm-hmm. So I'm fine with the Hall of Fame as an institution, by and large. They mostly get it right as far as who gets in. But the museum was really cool, a very cool building. My biggest issue with the museum is that there's not enough contextual information. So for me, it was fine, because I'm a freak. I'm a basketball freak. So I knew all the stuff. But I had to essentially act as a tour guide for my brother, who is, not really a big basketball fan, but has, broad interest in, an important cultural product of the United States of the last, and the world, but, it's an American game, although it was created by a Canadian, but created in Springfield, Massachusetts. So, whatever. He was interested on just a basic historical level, and I didn't feel like there was enough context provided in the little displays about what the significance of the items was. So I had to act as a tour guide, let him know this is cool because this is the jersey that Wilt wore for his 100-point game. And it says Wilt's 100-point game jersey, but that's all it says. So I had to explain that that's still the record, of course, in an NBA game. It happens in 1962. And, I believe it's in Hershey, Pennsylvania. They were playing
wow.
There was no team in Hershey, but for some reason one of the teams was playing there that season, something like that. I don't know. But I don't know all the details, but you know what? A better plaque would have had those details. It's my point. And so that was my issue, but there were tons of cool artifacts. They had a new Kobe exhibit because he was just inducted posthumously, and way more artifacts from his life and career than normal because unfortunately he's gone. So A lot of like all 5 of his rings are there on display, which you wouldn't see because again, most iconic basketball players, most of them are still alive.
Right.
You know, there's a couple that have just died in the last year or so, like very old guys. But even like Bill Russell, still alive, you know. And obviously Wilt Chamberlain died in the 90s. But like for the most part, most of those guys are still alive. As a professional sport, it's still fairly young. So it's pretty rare that you see like the top line items. Like Jordan, I think there's a jersey from his rookie season and like a pair of shoes, but it's not like you're not getting any of Jordan's rings, you know. Mm-hmm. That's not happening or whatever, you know. So but there were a lot of cool things. There was the piece of the Utah floor that he took that last shot for the Bulls. Mm-hmm. They had that cut out, and that's on display. You can touch it. You can touch it. So that was cool. But you know what's cooler?
What?
The fact that we got this interview this week. I don't want to bore the listeners too much this week with basketball talk.
Well, we'll shift it for a moment since we're just trying to vamp for a little bit. I mentioned going to a Hall of Fame with my mother, and that Hall of Fame was the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Which I still haven't been to, even though I live 90 minutes away from it.
Okay, well, my mother, within the past couple of years, she's gone on a kick where she's just trying to discover music, and one of the bands she really discovered and got into was one of your favorite bands, R.E.M.
One of my absolute favorite bands.
And her whole reason for wanting to go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame was she was like, man, I hope they have some R.E.M. stuff.
They should. I'm with your mom on this, but continue.
All that's there is they have this room where they have all the names of all the inductees and their autographs, like basically on the wall. And that's all they have. They have no other R.E.M. memorabilia at all. They got a Michael Jackson glove. They had some Prince stuff. They had all sorts of other random things.
As much as I love R.E.M., those are probably more iconic figures.
Probably.
But I'll say this. You know, R.E.M.'s been broken up for about a decade now. They broke up in 2011. They got to get some stuff in the Hall of Fame. Some artifacts. I want to see, like, maybe a couple bricks from the church they played their first basement show in. You know, maybe something like that. That place has been torn down, but the like foundation is still there and has been designated a historical place in Georgia because that's how important R.E.M. is. I feel like R.E.M. by the younger people younger than me and you, not respected as a major part of rock history. They're major. They are a major band.
Well, the problem is I feel like I recently have an issue with classic rock, and especially like classic rock radio and the things they play. And I really
they have not been ported over.
No, and R.E.M.
and other bands from that era have.
Yeah, R.E.M. kind of just gets shoved in with classic rock with like 2 or 3 songs, and there's not really much else going out there.
Here's my argument about R.E.M., and then I promise we'll just get to the interview because we have to have some non-Star Wars bullshit.
Yeah, of course.
So this is my thing with R.E.M.
Wouldn't be our show without it.
R.E.M. put together one of the great careers in the history of rock music. We're talking the first 10 records when Bill Berry was still in the band, who's the drummer. That is one of the most unprecedented runs. They're all good. All those records are good, and they go through many different phases. You got the 5 records on the independent label IRS, and then the 5 major label records. They are all awesome, and they are also deeply significant in terms of underground music achieving mainstream popularity. People always credit Nirvana with that. They were the band that kind of obviously fully kicked the door open, but R.E.M. was already a mainstream band before Nirvana. Like they already had like The One I Love and It's the End of the World as We Know It and Stand and like a bunch of hits, like top 40 hits before Nirvana. So that's one. And 2, and I'm not even pitting them against Nirvana or anything, whatever, but like because that was a separate scene in a lot of ways and kind of the next generation, really. But, like, that 80s underground rock scene, which includes The Replacements and Husker Du and all those bands, R.E.M. is the one that, like, did transcend that scene and basically became, like, one of the 2 or 3 biggest bands in the world, alongside whatever, U2 or, later Oasis or something. But it was, like, that... band, and then even when Bill Berry has the brain aneurysm and decides to leave the band, even the 5 records they made after that, which are clearly they're only kind of half in it, where they're like, I think they wanted to break up, but Bill Berry was like, I don't want to be the guy that broke up R.E.M. You got a contract, fulfill the contract, and that's basically what they did. They took a long time to do it. It took 13 years for them to put out 5 albums, which isn't crazy, but like took them a while to they used to be an album of year band in the 80s, but even those records have incredibly high highs on them. They're just one of the great rock bands of all time, and they deserve respect. They got respect from the Hall of Fame, weirdly. That's a Hall of Fame that always disrespects, and is very bad.
The most disrespectful Hall of Fame.
But, they did get respect from the Hall of Fame. They were in on their first ballot. They got in, and that's wonderful. But I just think, and I love that they're not going to get back together, even though they're all friends. I love that, they clearly value the idea of, that was a discrete moment in time. A very long one, by the way. They were together for 30 years. But that's a discrete moment of time, and, now they're off just doing their little low-profile stuff, and I love it. But they deserve your respect if you are, some 25-year-old who's, who is into rock music. I know lots of young people don't like rock music at all, and that's a whole other... That's fine. That's just the movement of time, and that's one thing. But if you like rock music and you don't listen to R.E.M., young whippersnapper, then change that. They're a great band. Okay, so we have this interview.
We have this interview going.
We've been talking for about 10 minutes, so let's throw to the interview now.
Okay.
And then we'll come back after. If there's anything... cool revelations, cool tidbits, we can discuss them, just as the hosts of the show.
Yes.
Afterwards. So
all right.
Stay tuned, and
we'll be back.
See you soon. All right, we're here with Emil Fortune, who is the editor of the Adventures in Wild Space series that came out a few years ago, that we reviewed a couple months ago.
Mm-hmm. So, genuinely enjoyed.
Yes, of course. And welcome, Emil.
Yeah, welcome
Thank you.
to Padawan Library.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for. It was so much fun listening to you guys read the series and enjoy it, and that was just great. I really enjoyed it. So thank you for having me.
Oh well, thank you for being part of it and actually giving us one of the highlights of our series, because there's so many books we've read in the series that are just kind of you just brush them under the rug. They're not worth anything.
They're not bad, but they're written for children.
Yeah,
so we're adults and we feel kind of bad saying bad things about them, but it's nice.
Yeah, your series is your group, the group of you who wrote this series. Your series is definitely up there in our list of series. That Boba Fett series they made around Attack of the Clones.
Oh my God! Don't come on!
It's awful.
Right,
just awful.
It's fine. It's for 8-year-olds. Always remember that.
Yes, for the children.
Anyway, so we just wanted to ask, how did you get involved in working on this project, and does it in line with what you do for a living normally, or is this just
I'd been working at Random House doing digital children's books, and I used to do picture books actually, and I'd got into this weird job, with the whole kind of ebook revolution and iPads and stuff, where I was digital editor. And I did that for 3 years, and that was a terrible career decision, because about 3 years in, I didn't have anything to do. So I was thinking about some other job, and I saw this job come up at Egmont, and they wanted somebody to come and edit. Egmont are a very brand-based company. They do a lot of stuff with Disney, and they do all kinds of movie tie-ins and that kind of thing. And they said they had a sort of a science fiction thing, and being a geek, I thought, well, that sounds interesting. And I went into the interview, and they said, well, just totally confidentially, we've just got the rights to do Star Wars children's books, and so we're putting a team together basically to do the Star Wars publishing. And I sort of rubbed my hands with glee and thought, yes, I can do this. That's great. Of all the kind of science fiction properties you could have said, that's absolutely the best one. And I knew I was going to get the job. And I got the job. And so then what we had to do was come up with a kind of program of books to do. And to begin with, a lot of them were, we would do some tie-in publishing around the new film, The Force Awakens, and we do some we pick up some books from America and publish them. And then there was an opportunity. We have this thing in the UK called World Book Day. And I say we had this in the UK called World Book Day, which is a little bit different over here. We do it on a different day to the rest of the world, because that's a very British thing to do. And the gig is basically every single kid in the UK gets a voucher, a £1 voucher, to spend on whatever book they like. But there's also all the publishers in the UK, all the children's publishers, we all make these little books, which we sell for £1, so you can just swap your voucher directly for the book. And it's just a way to get kids reading and get them kind of interested. And we thought, well, let's see if we can sell them a Star Wars book as a £1 book. And maybe we could turn it into a series. We could do like the little £1 book, and then we could bring out the other books and just start a little. And World Book Day went for it. And so then we went to Lucasfilm and said we want to make our own middle grade fiction series. And that was a big kind of trust thing for them, because I don't think anybody else got to do that, actually.
Not since because this is the only real like series of these that's been done
of the Disney era. Yeah.
I mean, they'd done like Servants of the Empire, which tied into Rebels,
right? Which we're doing next month,
which was great. But that was originated over there in the US,
mm-hmm.
and so we were the only foreign publisher that they let do that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think because they liked the idea, and because we sort of impressed on them that we could sell a lot of books on World Book Day if we did that. And that kind of spoke to them. Not that they need the money really from the children's books, but they like the idea that Star Wars books are getting into a lot of kids' hands.
Mm-hmm.
So we very quickly kind of put this plan into operation. So I mean, the first thing was I had to come up with an idea for what to do.
Now, just real quick, that book for the book day, that's book 0, right?
That's book 0.
Okay.
That's the rescue. And I mean, it's a bit of a funny thing, because you're not really supposed to sell that book, the World Book Day book,
mm-hmm.
outside World Book Day. It's not really supposed to be a thing that you continue to sell. I mean, it sells for £1, so there's no money in it.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, so we had to kind of make sure that if we were going into a series, that you could actually pick it up with book 1.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it sort of worked. I kind of think you need to read the first, the book 0 to kind of get.
Yeah, we didn't even know it existed before we started.
Yeah,
and so we're preparing months ahead, and we had bought all the 6 books, and I was like, have you seen this thing? Like this other book that we have to get?
Yeah, it was like week of that we discovered that there's this initial book. So,
but it's available digitally. So
it's available digitally.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. I mean, I was sort of hoping
in the US
they
anyway.
Sorry, I was just sort of hoping that they might just bind it into the first book. So, but maybe they didn't. Maybe they did that in America. I don't know. But
no, we bought it digitally. It was $1, so
okay.
I guess going along the same lines, but I assume that. But yeah, it's I think they might have printed it, but like in very low run.
Okay.
I'm not positive on that.
Yeah, we can get into the differences in the US and the UK versions, because
the design is different.
The design is different. Do you know anything about the US versions?
I don't like them nearly as much.
No, they are ugly.
I mean,
you are just throwing bombs right now.
I mean, here's the thing: the UK and the US, they like radically different covers, especially in the children's market. There's always a kind of benchmark set by just the market, by what people expect books to look like, and the kind of heavily illustrated, really descriptive covers that we have in the UK, they don't do them in the US nearly so much. Right. They go for much more kind of graphic things. So yeah, it's someone would have made that choice and thought, this is the best thing that we can do to sell these books in the US. I don't think they look as nice, but then
No, we always joke the US versions look like they look like tissue paper, like Eric Carle illustrations. So
God bless, rest in peace.
Yes, R.I.P. Great author.
But anyway, all right. So you developed the pitch for the series.
And it's interesting because when you go into a sort of shared world like that, where there's so many other people working, it's kind of like you're you're sort of like a new organism being, introduced into a thriving ecosystem, and you're kind of like, maybe I'd like to be a duck, and then the ecosystem kind of goes, we've already got a duck, and it's doing very well, and we don't want to cannibalize the duck. Have you thought about being a crab? And so and then five meetings down the line you're a crab, and I think the interesting, some of those things happen sort of because of what you're doing. You're making children's books, so Star Wars is an all ages, is an all genders. It's for everybody.
Right.
So you have a boy and a girl as the lead characters. That sort of happens, and it's interesting because I know people have said it's like Galaxy of Fear in many ways, which I never read. I'd never read Galaxy of Fear, but you can kind of see how the same kind of selection pressures work to create.
Young Junior Jedi Knights is the same way. It's a boy and girl. So
yeah, it's a very common.
Yeah, but that happens in all sorts of ways. So I think the outline that I wrote, the sort of series outline that I wrote, which eventually we went into production with, was probably like the 7th version. And so what would happen was the first version, we've got Milo and Lena, and we've got the Graf kids, we've got Crater and Morgan, because they all kind of fit together narratively, and we've got the parents. But in the first version, I think the parents had used to work at the Jedi archives on Coruscant, which we see in the second movie or whatever. And when Temple fell, they kind of scurried away, clutching as many records as they could. So you get that kind of thing about them having secret information. And so I sent that off, and then it came back, and they said, look, we don't want to do any Jedi stuff, because at the time they were doing Rebels, and Rebels has got a lot of the Jedi stuff in the Dark Times, and they didn't want to do any of that.
Makes sense.
Fair enough, because you can't have two ducks. So then and I think maybe like the 5th one, what were they looking for? They were looking for like a centuries old galactic warlord space pirate had kind of put a kind of Aladdin's cave together. It was kind of treasure planet thing, and it was full of, I don't know, cash and deadly spaceships or stuff like that. So everyone was looking for it. The rebels wanted to find it because they could use it, and the Empire wanted to find it. And so we went through all these different versions, and then eventually the one we ended up with was the kind of the maps of wild space idea. And again, just talking about that kind of pressure for everything to be a crab. Have you noticed how kind of Star Wars tends to default to, we need to find the maps? Yeah. Oh, we put the maps in a robot. It's
that's true. Yeah. Especially some of the recent movies have gone back to that frequently.
They just went map crazy.
I mean, you look at Rise of Skywalker; they were putting maps on the edge of daggers too. It was map crazy.
And I think it's kind of like, when you're thinking about how to tell a story, and you think, how do I get these characters from A to B? And at some point you just go, maybe they find a map that tells them how to go. So it's a bit, but I think, so in the end, my guys at Lucasfilm, who'd run the publishing over there, looked at it and they thought, this is great. Well, now we need to go to Story Group with it. And then I had this conference call, with and it was really like the Jedi Council scenes from the prequels. And I'm sort of sitting there going, and they need these maps, and everyone wants the maps. And then there's a long pause, and then someone like Pablo goes, "Okay, fair enough."
That's funny. So how did the writers of the series come in? It was Kevin Scott and Tom Huddleston. How does that process work?
I knew Tom because my wife, who's also an editor, now works at Scholastic. She published one of his books. He wrote a really great kind of middle grade retelling of Arthurian legend, and I thought it was great. It's called The Waking World. It's really good. And I knew that he was really good at atmosphere, and I knew that he was a really big Star Wars fan. He was the film critic for Time Out, and so his job was basically to watch movies, and he'd always loved Star Wars, and I thought he could do that. But what he hadn't done is he hadn't written any licensed fiction before. And I knew that would probably be an issue that he would take a little while to get up to speed. So then I asked around and I said, who do you know, who have you worked with, who's done a lot of licensed stuff? And Cab's name kept coming up, and I looked into him, and I see that he was, just an absolute pro at this kind of thing. So I thought that would be a good mixture. I thought it would be good to have, a real specific expert on this kind of publishing, and somebody who just writes really lovely prose and and characters, and just get them working together. So yeah, I asked them, and they said they'd love to do it, and I think because we were having to work so fast, as you always do in this kind of publishing, we only had a few months. So basically, I had to write the synopses for probably the first 3 books. Well, the first 4 if you count the rescue, because they needed to just get going. And then after that, we all got together and we sort of wrote the outlines of the last ones. But yeah.
How long did the books take to write, or did you have them all done, or did you have to were books coming out as you were writing them?
The latter, definitely. Yeah. I mean, we just barely managed to get, because we had to do the first 3 all in a batch, like the World Book Day 1 and the first 2. They had to all basically come out at the same time. And I think, the poor guys, I think they probably only had about a month, 6 weeks to write those.
Wow.
Well, and that was just it's grueling, this kind of fiction on the authors particularly.
The schedule. I always look at the printing dates in a lot of these series, and it'll be January 1999, March 1999. I'm just like, wow, just every other month then. Okay. But yeah. So did a lot change about once you went through that whole process with Lucasfilm and the story group, while the writing was happening, did any plans shift or change at that point?
I think really I think we had the first 3 books out before we really knew how we were going to end the series. Really once the one sort of fixed point that we were working towards was actually to get the kids to Lothal and tie into Rebels. Because
I like that a lot.
Lucasfilm really wanted us to do that, just because they like things that are coming out around the same time, to just have little connections to each other, because it's fun. So we knew we were doing that. After that, we really had no idea of what we were going to do until we were about halfway through, when we had a big sort of brainstorm and decided to work out what we wanted to do.
We really like the happy ending, and the fact that the series has an ending, because we've read a couple series that don't have endings,
that get canceled,
or we've also had issues. The Galaxy of Fear books specifically, they had an order for 6 books, and midway through they decided they wanted 12 books. So the series almost ends halfway through the series, and then there's just these 6 extra books on top of it. To have this really kind of, you guys made a really neat package with a great happy ending, where the children, they get back with their parents. The robot fight between Crater and Krennic's robot is hilarious.
I actually wanted to get into a couple of the individual characters a little bit before we wrap up, because I'm if listeners of the show know that I have a weird relationship with some droid characters. I feel, I don't know. It's a whole thing. I don't need to explain it. But oftentimes I find them annoying, and they go one way or the other too much in terms of how human they want to make them or not. And I thought Crater was first of all, just visually a really exciting, fun concept. And I also thought you cared about Crater, but he also still felt like he had a specific droid identity as well, not just that he was human too. I don't know. It was very good. I really like that character. Can you talk about coming up with that?
I guess I came up with the idea that he was a monster droid. I think I was cruising Wikipedia trying to guess what kind of a droid he could be, and I saw monster droid, and I thought, oh, that sounds fun. So we did that. I think David came up with the character design. David M. Busan, who's the illustrator, obviously came up with the character design. I can't remember. I think I specified his head being the architect droid because I liked that David Tennant character from the Clone Wars.
Sure.
But I mean, his personality. I mean, that was the thing, because I think as Cav originally wrote him, I think we both looked at it and went, that's C-3PO. Because he was doing that kind of prissy sort of thing. But I think the boys sort of they worked out how to make him distinct, and I think there is a sense that unlike 3PO, Crater usually gets what is going on. He's more worldly than 3PO is. 3PO is always kind of not really understanding what's going on, and worrying about it, whereas Crater is worrying about it because he does understand what's going on, and that's kind of nice. And just dialing up the sort of waspishness a bit on 3PO, so that he could. So we love that. Mike Siglane, who's the head of sort of Star Wars publishing, and he was a lovely guy and a champion for us. He loved Crater, and he particularly loved we had a meeting with him once where he said maybe in each book Crater should get a different body part, like grafted on. And then like at the end he'd be like massive, like Optimus Prime, and
it's like Mega Man, he gets different powers.
Yeah, he just gets bolted up into this like super hench, and then we thought that was really funny, and we didn't really get to do it until the last book, and we remembered that was a funny idea, and again, serendipity, because Rogue One was coming out, right. And so we had the sort of chance to use this cool other bad robot, and so the idea of just having them, do a massive Barney was fantastic. I love how Tom wrote it as well. I love how Tom wrote it. So
it was that last book is very exciting because we also love the character Mork, and that book has the chapter from Mork's point of view, and like fantastic. That was like so exciting for us because it's like we loved this character going into it, and then to finally get this a chapter just for the character was exciting.
Was that Tom the last book?
Yeah, I mean we'd sort of. Before we write any of these books, we do a really detailed synopsis so we know what's going to happen in each chapter, because then that has to go to like Story Group, and they have to make sure that it didn't, accidentally recreate the first scene of Rogue One, which is what Cav did in the first book, completely by accident, and we had to make it different enough that it wasn't like Jyn Erso and Krennic and whatever. So we knew that was going to happen. I didn't know that he was going to write it from Mork's point of view, though. I mean, I think that was just Tom's genius there, and especially because I'd sort of told Tom, this is the last book. You can have more pages, you can go all out, you can make it widescreen basically, and he just ran with it and just did whatever he felt like, which was great.
Yeah, that's always fun to see stuff like that, and it happens in other books too. And it's no shot at the authors because, as you mentioned, it's a hard schedule and everything, but it's rare you find like just inventiveness like that where it's like, oh, let's tell this chapter from the perspective of a character you didn't even think had like thoughts before. So I really like that. The other character that I think is worth going a little deep on is Captain Corda, the villain of the series, who has the great iron jaw. Like I was really taken with him. Can you talk about the creation of that character?
So if you look over my shoulder, I've actually got my Zoom background is David's original cover for the rescue. I'll send it to you if you like. But because we kind of wanted the overall villain to be Darth Vader to begin with. We wanted it to be Vader chasing them. And I said to Lucasfilm, can we do that? And they said no, because first of all, we don't want to tie Vader down. He's got important duties and, other stories across the galaxy. And, so, and second of all, if Vader crosses paths with these kids, they'll be dead because it's Darth Vader.
We know he kills children.
It's just going to end your story right there. So we can't really do that. And we don't want it to be like Vader shows up and the kids, they trick him and, he trips in his cape and falls over. And, we don't want Vader to look silly. And, when they brought him into Rebels, it was very much like, here is approaching doom, run away as fast as you can, which I thought was very effective. So we didn't want that. We weren't allowed to do that. So we needed someone else. And you see, the thing is, you can't quite avoid this guy who's going to be multiply, mugged off by these kids. You can't avoid a bit of Saturday morning TV show,
right,
incompetent villain thing. And so we thought, well, we should lean into that. We should actually go, this guy does have deep flaws. He's not actually very good at his job. He keeps trying to be sneaky, but he's not really sneaky enough. He keeps trying to be ruthless but he's not quite. And so one of the things that we had this sit down with the boys to talk about the last few books and what should happen. And top of the list was we want to kill Corda. So we want to bring him back and kill him. And we did that. I mean.
It's a little ambiguous.
It's a little ambiguous, but funny.
How's he going to survive on that?
Yeah, you kind of leave him in a place where he's definitely going to die. And I remember you messaged me on Twitter and said, "Oh, Corda's dead." You right out confirmed it to me that Corda's dead. I do have one question about Corda, and in the book it says that he lost his jaw during the Clone Wars from a battle droid. I want to know what type of battle droid. One of those tan, lanky ones, or a super battle droid? Which one knocked it off?
I don't know. Cav has thought. See, it's interesting because having sort of created a lot of these characters, and now Cav is really taking them to different places in the comics. So I don't actually know whether Vizsla, or actually as in the initial draft, Vitla Corda he's still alive. Maybe he's popped up. Maybe he's done a Boba Fett somewhere. But so Cav would be the guy to ask that question.
Okay.
He would definitely have thought about it. I'd slightly regret the metal jaw, I have to say, because I do. Though I think he's a lovely, cool character design, I've fallen into the trap of having a villain with a kind of disfigurement or a disability.
Yeah, that's fair.
And that does sort of bother me a little bit. But on the other hand, what can I say? Nobody's perfect. But my feeling, probably one of those really big battle droids.
All right.
Because I think he should have. I think there is bravery in Corda. And there is but he's just kind of cursed. He's just jinxed.
Well, he's got these motive,
you keep thinking he might like a lot of Star Wars villains, he might turn or something at some point, but then that's mostly just because he's not very good at his job. Which I enjoyed. It was he would be like, "Oh, I got demoted. Maybe I should do something about that." But no, he still wants to prove himself.
Yeah, I still got to get these children.
Actually, what he steals a really snazzy ship off the Empire.
Sure.
He's cunning enough to do that, but he just has this fatal flaw that he doesn't. He just can't quite. Yeah, he's jinxed. So I mean, but it meant that we got to bring in Tarkin, which was lovely, and Tom just had such fun knowing that he could write Tarkin because
that ending of the fifth book. Yeah, very exciting.
Yeah,
when he shows up, I was like, oh wow.
Yeah. And also in that last, we're always talking about that last book, but the fact that you made the one droid Krennic's droid to come spy on Tarkin, and at one point a couple stormtroopers are like, "Wow, that's sort of low of Krennic to send his droid to come spy on him," but it's that's totally in line with who Krennic is too.
You did a good. The whole team did a very good job of kind of making the universe feel. People talk about the lived-in Star Wars universe, and it's usually about the aesthetic of it. But every character you felt that you're introduced to, even just a random stormtrooper, you felt like you could go in to their head and find out what their perspective on the situation was. And I really it just felt very full. The universe felt very full. So
I'm really, really pleased because we kind of did it by the seat of our pants, and it's just the guys were just, they just did such a brilliant job. So proud of them.
Now let's say theoretically the series came out a couple years later. Do you think the Disney Group would have made you go to Batuu for a Galaxy's Edge tie-in?
Oh, completely, 100%.
It sounds like that's their MO, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and because they ain't stupid, and they.
Well, that's that Eisner era synergy going on there.
Yes.
So
I thought the fact that they didn't let you use Darth Vader though was really made that Tarkin reveal really effective, because it kind of felt like it was on its own in its own universe, like it felt like Star Wars, but it was dealing with its own ideas and its own situations. And then when Tarkin shows up, that's a real that's a real surprise. And I think if Vader had been chasing him the whole time, you couldn't really pull something like that off. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I mean that's so many of these things which were kind of forced on us in the end turn out to make better art in the end.
Right.
I'm a big fan of the idea of working under these kind of constraints and how it can bring creativity out, and that's one of the lovely things it's one of the things that I enjoy working in sort of licensed books. You always have something to push against,
Mm-hmm. It's funny, the series gets compared to Galaxy of Fear, but in Galaxy of Fear, Darth Vader actually shows up at one point, and there's this weird cloning thing going on, and he actually has to help the children, and it's like actually wildly out of character for him. So like it doesn't like work at all, and that's part of those last 6 books that were forced upon the author too. So like he had to really come up with stuff. So
you mentioned working in licenses. Have there been other licenses you've enjoyed working in? And I want to give you a chance to plug some of your other work and stuff.
Yeah, so I just spent 3 years. I'm starting a new job on Monday, but I just spent 3 years doing Doctor Who books. Doctor Who is really, really along with Star Wars. That's what I grew up with with Star Wars and Doctor Who, and so I've managed to tick both of those off my bucket list now. But the Doctor Who is an amazing franchise because it's been going on for 60 years now or something, and I mean there's so much. I mean there's considerably more Doctor Who stories out there than Star Wars stories. I mean, when between the series getting cancelled at the end of the 80s and coming back in sort of 2005, at one point I think Virgin Publishing were publishing one Doctor Who novel a month, so I got to work on that. Yeah, we did some nice books, and I am moving on to Titan Books on Monday, which is I don't know if you know them, but they're sort of UK. They do a lot of again sort of movie tie-ins and things. But I'm moving out of children's books which will be after sort of 20 years or so, which would be interesting.
Well, congratulations on the new gig.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming on. We loved the series, and I'm glad you got some satisfaction out of 2 30-year-olds enjoyed it. So yeah,
I really, really did. Yeah, thanks so much, guys. It was a real pleasure.
All right. Well, thank you again, Emil. Thank you, and extend thank you to Kevin and Tom for a great book, and also David, and also to Richie Hall.
Oh, yes, brilliant designer. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. In the U.S. books, he gets no credit in those.
Well, they're different designs.
I have one. Okay, and then also another name is Janine Spencer, who did the typeset for the book, apparently.
Yeah, lovely Janine. Yeah, Egmont likes to credit everybody pretty much, apart from the editor.
That's you don't always see that. So
no,
nice.
You definitely don't see that in who published these. This is Lucasfilm Press put out these U.S. versions, so they apparently don't favor, giving people the credit they deserve.
Oh my, okay. Anyway, all right. Thank you again for coming on, and for the audience, please stay tuned. Welcome back to Padawan Library. I'm Tim May here, as always, with Levi Peretic.
Hello.
And I want to thank again Emil for being on the show, our first guest. I think it went pretty smoothly.
Mm-hmm.
You were throwing bombs about other books, which, is kind of unprofessional, but that's okay.
I did not go to school for journalism, so...
I don't know if that's a journalism thing, just a decent, he works in the industry. He's not going to talk shit about the Boba Fett books from 20 years ago.
Well, he doesn't work for Scholastic. He probably hasn't read those either. But,
no, he hasn't, I'm sure. But regardless, he was a great guest. We learned a lot of cool stuff. And again, if you guys haven't checked out the Adventures in Wild Space books, they're really a good time. So one of the better series we've read for this show.
I agree.
So anyway, other... we don't have much to say. I think it was a fairly... self-evident.
Hang on. I got to segue into where we're going with this. All right.
Okay.
Adventures in Wild Space, very good series. Definitely one of the top tier series that we've gone. But it's not the top tier as in the work of Jude Watson.
Well, who we love. And our next week is our 100th episode. So we're going to do an incredibly unusual thing. We're going to... we're going to record in person and in a special location, which you'll hear about next week.
Yeah,
but,
surprise location. We're all about surprises.
I know. We're very. This is top level podcasting right now. Marin who? So anyway, next week though we will be reviewing a non-Star Wars book by the wonderful Jude Watson, who here is credited. Is this her real name? Under her or a different pen name?
I don't. She's gone under both names, so I don't know.
Regardless, under the name Judy Blundell, she won a National Book Award for this book called "What I Saw and How I Lied." It's a post-World War II thriller. Sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
Very excited to read this. Actually, this is kind of a period. I love mid-century stuff. And I'm excited because, we've been big fans of Jude Watson on the show, and I want to show her some respect in our 100th episode by reading one of her original works.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we're doing next week, and then we'll announce next week our next proper Star Wars series. We only got a few left, really.
Only 3 series left and a few standalone books, so...
But we'll announce what we're doing next week. It might have been mentioned during the interview.
It might have been mentioned during the interview.
Go back and scrub through that, and you'll be able to figure out. And so pick those books up. Anyway, this was a good time, and sorry about missing last week, but hopefully we'll be on a good run here.
Yes, we'll be on a roll, and until the books are due back...
The library is closed. Padawan Library is hosted and produced by Tim May and Levi Peretic. It is edited by Tim May. Our theme song is by The Astral Project. Our artwork is by Freddie Funbuns. Padawan Library is copyright 2021. Tim May and Levi Peretic. All rights reserved.